Why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. I hope everyone's keeping safe and getting a chance to get out. This evening's agenda is an update on the COVID-19 as it may affect the town. We'll be reviewing the revenues and expenditures to date, and then we have old and new business. So Scott, I'll let you start off with the update.
So the a lot of documentation coming this week. The governor has established an economic reopening task force that they're going to start working on ways to start phasing in reopening the government. So he sent out a kind of a mission statement on what they're going to try to accomplish. So that's that first document that's in your book there. And it's going to be interesting to see what process it's going to take to start opening things up. And I know he's concerned about what's happening in the states surrounding us, because if we open up things too soon, everybody from the other states are going to flood here. And even without opening it up, I was coming down the coast from Portsmouth through Rye and Hampton on the weekend. Luckily, I was going southbound, because northbound on 1A along the coast was completely bumper to bumper. And I would say 8 out of 10 of those cars was Massachusetts plates. People trying to escape there, thinking they were going to find relief. And of course, that whole stretch is closed down. You can't park. The state police were all along there making sure nobody parked, nobody could get on the beach. So I think a lot of people drove and didn't get any relief from being confined to their cars. So it's going to be interesting to see how the governors in the surrounding states phase this in, because what one does is going to impact the rest to some extent. The second set of documents is, in fact, Bob Romerl, the moderator, sent an email today, and behind that, and what prompted his email was one I already had in your book, was the statement from the Secretary of State talking about the funding that the state has received. So they got $3.2 million in funding out of the Federal CARES Act to help offset some of the additional costs of the elections coming in the fall, because there's going to be extra preparation that's going to be needed. So out of that federal money, New Hampshire got the $3.2 million, which will be used to help support the community efforts in that vein. And the moderator, Bob Romerl, sent over an email this afternoon, coincidentally enough, with what he sees as some of the necessary things that we're going to have to prepare for as we move into the election season in November and prior to that, even in the fall. And his primary concern, obviously, is the safety of the election workers and making sure we have adequate personal protective equipment to protect them at the polls when people come in. So he put his list together of what he feels may be necessary, and wanted you to take a look at it as well to see if you were in agreement. I mean, I don't see anything on there that doesn't seem like a reasonable request, but it's certainly up to the pleasure of the board to determine what additional things we could purchase. And at this point, we're not sure how much of that $3.2 million that the state is going to trickle down to each of the communities, and what formula they're going to base it on. So that's yet to be determined, but I'm sure that's going to be in the works over the next few months as well. And other concern is some of the things like the N95 masks, the face shields, gloves, things like that. Hopefully will be, though we have some of those things here now, We certainly don't have enough to meet his request. And we just hope that the supply gets better and that we're able to get our hands on them when we need them as we move through the next few months. So then beyond Secretary Gardner's announcement, there was also just a note in there from an Adnock Community Hospital on, kind of what they're doing right now as far as, what they've done to set up new protocols at the hospital for patients coming in, and working with our first responders to do that. So just a letter from the CEO and the chairman of the board of trustees there. And then the next several documents are all from the governor's office regarding the mostly amending existing executive orders or emergency orders. And there is a team that's been put together, and there's about 15 people that he's appointed to the team, and that's the governor's office for emergency relief and recovery team. And there are mostly businesses and a few political appointees on that team. And the concern was there was no municipal representation there. So the New Hampshire Municipal Association is going to be put in a request to see if they can kind of modify that list so that municipalities get more say in what that team does. And again, this is related to support for the community, support for businesses, but also ties into the effort to reopen the state as well. The one behind that is an extension of the original executive order that brought us to May 4th. Has been extended 21 days, so effectively the governor's emergency order is now in effect to May 25th. So we're going to have another 3+ weeks of kind of the pattern we're in now. And I don't know whether he's going to be making any adjustments to that over the next few weeks or not. And again, I noticed that where Charlie Baker in Mass made some announcements today about starting to open a few things up. So I didn't really pay close attention to what it was, but there is starting to be some movement. I think as of May 1st, Maine is also going to start to open some things up. So I think Governor Sununu is going to be under some pressure too, I think, to start, opening up certain types of businesses. The interesting thing is that it seems like some of the businesses that are open are actually becoming a little more restrictive as far as how many people they're going to let in the store and social distancing. They're getting a little more militant about enforcing those things. I'm not sure where this is going, but I think we'll all be glad when it's over. I know that. Then behind that is Emergency Order 29, which you've already seen, but they did add 2 additional addendums to it. And again, this doesn't really affect us specifically as a town, because this has a lot to do with towns that run utilities like sewer, water, things like that, and we don't. Again, just wanted to make sure you were aware. When the original one came out, they had Exhibit A and B attached to it. Now they've added Exhibit C, and that affects some of the fish and game regulations and apprentice hunters licenses. So it all has to do with if a license expires, that it's going to be extended. The expiration date is going to be automatically extended so that nobody's in violation of having an expired license. And the other one, affects the Public Utilities Commission, and again, that doesn't really affect us that much, except maybe indirectly through Eversource. The 3 new executive orders are, you know, the first one, 34, is more to do with how healthcare providers or health insurance providers are providing coverage. And it has more to do with insurance coverage, and I'm sure it does have an impact through our, you know, through our Harvey Pilgrim insurance for our employees. And executive, or emergency order 35 is, again, mostly to do with retirees. Originally, there was a 28 waiting day period. If you terminated or retired, you couldn't start working for another New Hampshire retirement system community without a 28-day waiting period. They've waived the waiting period, so you could literally retire from a job one day and start your new job the next day. So, makes you wonder which special interest groups are up putting pressure on the governor and the legislature to come up with some of these exceptions, but that's one of them. And emergency order 36, which is the most recent one, unless something came out today that I wasn't aware of, I think it's the last one for the moment, is really ensuring the workman's compensation adjustments that they announced earlier are, especially for first responders and COVID-19, are kind of embellished a little. And that's pretty much it. And then I had a couple of other things regarding COVID-19 that came up during the day. So one is we did get a survey from the New Hampshire Department of Agriculture, and there, and this is something that Sean wanted to discuss tonight, is the impact on the farmers market type of situation, and they're trying to get an idea on what we're doing as a town with the with the farmers markets. They have a brief survey on when do you usually open? Are you just delaying the opening? Not going to open at all this season? Things like that, because they're also looking at ways to leverage federal monies to assist communities that might have relied somewhat on the farmers market to help local farmers and their ability to make a living. So that's came up, and then let me see, I think I had one other thing here that's all the budget related stuff. I guess that was it that I had on COVID-19, unless anybody has.
The first one I'd like to hope we could address is Bob's suggested list for protective equipment for for everybody.
Yep.
My question, I guess, I would think what we want to do is somehow get the word out, go with an absentee ballot.
If you feel concerned about yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
But make them aware that they can do that and still be in, because a lot of times I think people have the premonition they have to be out of town.
Right.
Well, it's not that reason here.
Right.
So I think if maybe we could even start early with a message on the website.
So the town clerk tax collector was concerned that things might be going in that direction, because absentee ballots create a certain amount of work for their office as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll talk to her about what message she'd like to craft, and then run it by you before we actually put something up on the website, if that's okay.
Yeah, as long as we just don't forget about it. So,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
that'd be good.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, I think if we can start early enough now and see if we can't procure those list of items that he has listed, I think they're all common sense things. just where the availability is, but I'm thinking if we start early, maybe by September we'll have them.
And I'm assuming the moderators and electors budget might not cover these
No,
things?
no.
So what would you like me to?
We'll find money somewhere, but let's
Okay.
in the meantime get it.
I mean, basically, we know that unless stuff really changes, we will probably have some extra funds here or there in the budget, so.
Or get reimbursed through the state.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I think you might have seen the email I sent out to the department heads, asking them to track all their COVID-related expenses.
Yes.
Just in case we're in a position to get reimbursed. There's a FEMA program that's out there right now that I sat through a webinar on last Thursday or Friday. And the minimum threshold on that is you have to spend at least $3,300 on COVID-related expenses to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna see if we add up the labor, materials, anything else that we've had to do, and it's one of the qualifying items that we can get reimbursed for, then we can put an application and see where it goes.
I think just reading their emails, you far exceeded that.
Just talking some truth to that.
All right.
Yeah, if I gave you everything that I got, this book would be this thick every week. It's unbelievable. We've got more information coming at us.
I was trying to find it, but I'll see if I can find, in the, not that it's a big deal, but not that expensive, but where you had the automatic sanitizer dispenser, for like, there was one I saw that someone had built out of PVC pipe that you just use your foot. So it creates like a loop out of PVC pipe long enough to go to the ground, and it sits on the larger bottles of hand sanitizer. And it actually uses a spring from things, so they do it, so because none of the grocery stores and small stores, all those things were out of stock. So this person, it was for like Ace Hardware or whatever, someone just built one. And it uses, say, like 3/4 inch sleeves, you know, for the outside frame, but then it uses 1/2 inch PVC for that loop, so that when you put it all together, it slides through the 3/4.
I'd have to see it.
Yeah, put it this way, I looked at it and went, wow, that's pretty awesome. It probably cost them a whole, maybe $20 to build the thing, and all they have to do is just replace
Yeah, the
bottle
actual jug.
sanitizer.
Yeah.
And
The ones they had on the cruise ship were interesting, is that, you know, you just bring your
Yeah.
hand, they're on a stand, and down on the bottom was a pad.
Yeah.
So anything that dripped,
yeah,
they caught it. I
and,
said,
and
"Oh,
they,
never
like I
saw one of
said,
those."
they use them. We have them at all our summer camps and stuff
Yeah.
like that. You can get them through like, I don't know, Amazon sells them, but normally like Granger, different companies like
Yeah.
that sell them.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just a hand. The one I always find funny is a person, we had this at one place, so we had put the bottles out, and they said, well, we have to push the plunger to get the hand sanitizer out. We're like, yeah. They're like, but everyone else is touching that. I said, and the very next thing they touch is hand sanitizer. Oh, yeah. I said, so yeah, this might be dirty, but this is clean. I said, just don't touch it again when you're done. Walk away.
I think we'll find one that
Yeah, that'll
meets the
work,
needs,
yeah.
yeah.
And then with the farmers market, because I think it's allowable. I'm seeing other farmers markets opening up, but I didn't know what the. You know, I fielded some questions.
The only issue I had, and I saw, only because I didn't, like I saw it, like I know Peterborough's, I guess is already open, and I haven't gone over to look at theirs, and my only thing would be making sure that we are spacing the vendors out a little bit more,
Yeah.
so that, again, we're not having people congregate, or even having the vendors absent-mindedly, because, well, my tent's right next to your tent, and it's all of a sudden they're within 3 feet of each other instead of 6 feet. So that would be the only thing is spacing them out, and that, you know, if we're gonna do it, whether that means we have to push it further down into the lot, so we use a larger area, or something like that, but that's my only, other than that, I am very much in favor of us bringing the farmer's market on, because right now, I think our local farmers and vendors are really helping a lot of people fill the gap that they can't get right now at grocery stores and stuff. I know Barrett Hill Farm is, I mean, I know they're one town over, but the people went to school here, everything. They are meeting a lot of demands for people that can't get out to the grocery to buy meats and vegetables and things like that, and they're delivering.
But I'm,
So-
I'm sorry.
But I think that would be my only piece, is that if we do it, which I personally am in favor of, I think we have to space it so that we don't have people right on top of each other.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be concerned though with the interaction between the buyer and the seller. In most places, and I haven't gone out much, I think Beltate's in one other place, they have a barrier. What do they do here? Are they, you know, I don't wanna be promoting something for the benefit of a group that is kinda in conflict with what we're trying to
I think
prevent.
I think we could mandate PPEs, you know, that they have to wear masks, they have to use gloves, pieces like that.
Yeah,
If we want barriers, I mean, if they're using the pop-up tents, it's easy enough to use Velcro and attach plexiglass,
yeah, just
Yeah.
something that,
just something that,
you know,
yeah,
the gloves, you know, that is beneficial.
And there is some standards and guidelines I think that the state had released for the farmers markets, which I can get together for next week, and then also talk to the vendors and see how many of them actually want, you know, to press it and
Mhm.
like press on, like to see if it's worth it or not.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
could be it. I mean, if it's gonna end up looking like your end of season where you got 2 pop-ups out there, is it really worth going through all the hassle? But if you have, you know, a good half dozen to a dozen vendors that are interested, because you figure they're probably hurting,
hmm
and anything they could do.
Because I know probably half of them are indifferent and they like to do it more than anything, like the crafters and some of the baking people, and then the actual farms have their own farm stands, and so I haven't gotten too much pressure from the vendors specifically. It was just outside questions.
Right.
Yeah, and kind of like along the lines of, you know, people checking in, like the paper asking if we're gonna join, you know, like the farmers market, like openings that are going on around us and things. So
Yeah, I'd
All
say,
right.
yeah,
I'll look into it a little bit more this week.
awesome.
And just to let you guys know too, the softball season ended up, we had voted to cancel it last week, ahead of like any other executive orders, and because it felt like people just wanted more of an answer than anything. And
Softball and Little League, or just softball?
I'm not sure about the Little League. I'll
Softball.
reach out to those guys, but yeah, softball specifically. But like because I was pretty strongly like leaning that way and kind of influenced the decision. Because I don't think it's right that if the executive order gets lifted on this date and then all of a sudden we start having practices and then we have hundreds of people interacting down at the fields, I think there'll be that rush. Like people just want to automatically just be around. I'm already starting to kind of see it out there. So I think it'd be prudent of us just to say that, maybe even let the Little League people know that we're not going to let it happen in town. Like if they haven't made a decision one way or the other, you know, like since we decided like for the softball not to have it, like it should
Yeah, I thought everything was
affect.
off the table.
Okay.
I thought the next thing that was gonna happen was maybe soccer.
Yeah. Well, and that's where our mindset should be. But
Yeah.
there are still people just waiting for dates to
Because
change.
wouldn't Little
and-
League be ending soon? I thought it ended when
School ends
school ends.
roughly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if this executive order's been extended to May 25th. School's normally out in what, middle of June?
Yeah, it's June 12th, June 5th.
Yeah, so.
And we even took the, it seemed like since they had just pushed like the remote learning for school, and that was just kind of like, why would you have a league going on even if you could, like if the dates allowed you to and the kids aren't in school, it's kind of,
Yeah.
traditionally it's all lined up.
Yeah.
So I'll check with those guys and see where they're at with things too and report back.
Yeah, because I thought,
I think we should
yeah.
let them know it's canceled.
Okay.
You know, not.
Yeah.
They were not going to allow anything on our
Yeah,
field.
Yeah, like if
because
they
I
come-
thought even best case was, looking at it, if you looked at the entire season, and like I said, okay, so the executive order's lifted June 4th, okay? All right, so we're not gonna do anything until July, whatever,
Mhm.
so you would push everything back a month, so like, Little League would get pushed back, then soccer would get pushed back, because once you get to basketball season, once you start getting into those sports, basketball is inside. So as long as you can continue to use it on the weekends, normally basketball ends, and then you have kind of a dead area.
Yeah.
So it was a matter of whether you were gonna just push everything and compact that dead time, but I am completely fine with just canceling it and just being the good example and saying, look, we're not gonna risk it at this time. So.
Okay. All right, I'll let them know.
Anything else, Sean, on that you wanted to bring up?
Not really. No,
Okay.
I think that's pretty much, everything's everything.
Okay.
But it's good to get the clarification for the farmer's market, so I'll just find out, like I said, from the vendors, like
Yeah.
if they want to go
If they wanna do it, then.
and put in
then
the
you
extra
can-
effort with the plexi and like some of the PPE. Yep.
The next thing on the agenda was reviewing the expenditures and revenues. And I see a heavy paper.
Yeah, like, I wanted to separate them with color, and unfortunately, all we had was heavier cardstock, but
So is this
So-
what you had emailed to us?
it's
Okay.
exactly what I emailed
Okay.
you. The blue pages are the revenues, year-to-date, and the white pages are the, budget expenditures year-to-date, line by line. And we're actually in pretty good shape. There's nothing that looks like, in fact, we're percentage-wise, considering that we're a third of the way through the year, everything should be around 67% spent, and we still have, in most cases, 70 or 80% or more of the monies and those line items still available. So nobody's rushing out to spend a lot of money on things right now.
There's a couple, if you just bear with me a second, I'm waiting for I had to email it back to myself with my comments so I could raise a couple of questions. I think the first one that I saw, and it's shot dollars and whatnot, I was kind of surprised to see that the assessors had already been paid beyond whatever our time frame was. It's gonna get paid at some point or the other, but, I was looking at it the same way. We need to be 67, 70%, and I think they were at 58, and I'm like, oh, I wonder how that happened.
Yeah, they're at 68%. Well, they've got 68% left. They've spent 42%.
Yeah, so
Okay, maybe
that has to do when Roger issues the stipend checks for those positions, and I'm not sure what happened there, why
okay.
they seem to be ahead of everybody else, but
Yeah, because the only other one I saw that was really weird was building was.
Oh, I thought they were way. Hang on, I opened up revenues, looking at expenditures.
They've only got 64% left, but it's because they spent.
well, that was the software
Yeah,
expenditure.
yeah.
That's what threw that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
That was-
education and training too. Not that it was a lot, but they've only got 18% left on their education and training. So he must have already had something come through that he had to apply for there.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the rest of them I looked and I saw they were all right around 70, 76. They were actually, most of them are in better position than they need to be.
So I also had,
Hang on, I just wanted before.
okay.
I don't know why this file was so big. 5 megabytes.
That's a lot.
You must have done a lot of notes.
No, this is how it came.
Oh,
Well, that would be our scanner,
Is that what it was?
our copy machine.
Okay.
Not compress that file,
One, next page.
because that isn't that big a PDF document, that should be 5
Yeah.
megabytes. It's almost like it's a.
yeah, like, yeah, 4.8, yeah, on the expenditures.
What's your 4.8?
Expenditures, 4.8 meg.
Oh. One that I thought was maybe just if the code went to the wrong place, but we haven't had a EMD, but we've got cost and,
I saw that too, and like I said, Roger wasn't here yesterday, and he was
okay, just,
limping around today, but I saw it as well saying,
Yeah.
How could we have charged anything to that account? So
Uh,
it just might be, booked to the
and-
wrong account number.
then Sean, you might be able to answer this question. Adult recreation we've spent almost twice the cost.
And that's
Thought
where
maybe that's not right either.
I was kind of stuck, like at that point too. Yeah, I can ask about that. Like
Yeah.
I don't know why it was
Yeah.
put there. And then there was also in the pool equipment and maintenance.
That was my other question is, did we have work done on replacing, or did they buy a lot of chemicals?
We haven't purchased anything for that.
No?
No, the pool's just nothing this year so far.
Yeah, pool education training.
So that might have been the class,
Yeah.
That
she'd-
was booked.
She'd already put a.
but then it got pushed back. Yeah.
but
I'm
she may
looking
have
under
already
pool
booked it.
equipment maintenance was
Yeah,
2136.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what that. I'd have to get clarification probably from Roger just to see what he put against those accounts.
Yeah,
There
that's
shouldn't
what
be
I'm wondering.
anything. I mean,
Yeah.
everything's been frozen. What have they been doing?
And
Yeah. And
if it was
likewise,
done in December, it would have been last year's budget, and
Right.
now it's like that. I was thinking it's just somebody's got the wrong cost code in there, or
Yeah.
whatever we call it here, account number. So,
so would we ask Roger directly for that?
well,
or?
Scott can
Okay.
follow up on those.
Okay.
Okay, let me just close this one. And the revenues. The one on the revenues, while I'm waiting for it to open, I remember, is there's I think it was $5,999 negative under the fire.
Grant, wasn't it the grant?
Yeah, maybe that's what it was, but I'm like,
And I saw that too, and not sure what that was.
So, do you mind if we touch back on the expenditures
sure.
part so I can? So on the warrant articles, like how does that work? Like, does it get expended? Like when it says it's expended, is it put into those trust accounts or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And most of the, like the ones where social services, those get paid out.
So I guess
The
dispersed,
ambulance, I
yeah.
think, is the only one that we do, is it quarterly? I think they bill us quarterly,
Monthly,
monthly.
we're doing monthly with SVS right now.
Thank you.
Oh, come on. Oh. Now it tells me my file is damaged. I'll rely on the paper copy. Did Colleen, did you tell me she wasn't able to print out year, comparative year?
So she did come up with some rough
Oh,
numbers
okay.
for me today.
Yeah,
And, so current bank balance, without, we're due a payment for the highway block grant of 31,000 and change. We haven't seen that yet, so without that, our current bank balance is $1.84 million. Go up to 1.79 if we get that. So our revenues, first 4 months of 2019, our revenues were 779,017. This year so far, surprisingly enough, is 821,960. So we're actually up $43,000 through basically yesterday.
how does it come, I was saying that we were at 1,029,000 based on the revenue report.
So she's also, she's taking everything that's in the general fund. So that's including monies that were already there, not necessarily monies that are just coming from the budget. So that's why these might not exactly reconcile. But when I asked her to break out just the revenue portion of that,
Yeah,
that's where, like I said, so far this year, 829,960 in revenue has come in. So January and February were stronger than last year.
let me ask you a question though, the 829,960
Yep.
would be less than what's shown here of 1,029,000, right?
Correct, because she has other, there, depending on how she breaks out those balances, I don't know whether she, some of those might include, monies from some of the funds that were set up. I don't know whether like police revolving, parks and recs revolving. She was trying to explain it to me, and honestly, I wasn't sure where she was going with the conversation on that. But you know, I wanted her to give me, you know, with the real revenues coming in so far this year from, you know, from taxes, from registrations, things like that. And that's where these numbers came from. And the, so let's see. Yeah, there's some transfer station money in here as well.
Yep. All of that should be in here as part of that revenue.
But everything that she's got listed here, like for instance, for the 317,489 that came in January, all of that, with the exception of a few transfer station items, were all from the town clerk tax collector's office. So any other sources of revenue may not be included in these numbers.
Okay.
The concern that I have is, obviously, once COVID hit, then the numbers flipped in a way that even though our overall total year-to-date is higher than last year by 43,000, March was down by 50,000, and April was down by about 27,000.
What was down? Overall revenue?
Overall revenue coming in, and again with the
Compared to
office
last
closed
year.
with-
Yeah.
compared to last year, because they wanted her to do a year-by-year comparison. Now, I also feel that one of the reasons why January was so strong this year is because the tax bills went out later in the year last year. So some of that revenue, for instance, I mean, that is $92,000 higher than it was the previous January. And that leads me to believe that might be some of the residual coming in from those late tax bills that went out in December last year. That's my theory. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I was trying to understand what the huge jump was, and I'm thinking that was just likely somewhat deferred revenues that might have shown up in 2019 instead, and we saw it in early 2020.
Well, when I was looking at the revenue report though,
Yeah.
the revenue report doesn't include property taxes. No revenue regarding property tax, other than
Yeah,
the interest and penalties.
yeah.
That number is in there.
And again, she,
That's why I'm wondering if we're looking,
and honestly, I don't know. And
Okay.
This is where I miss Linda.
Yeah.
So I don't have a clear answer for you, unfortunately.
all right, the one that I would like to ask you to check on is.
It's fire grants,
Yeah, what page is that one on?
page 5. Second
Yes,
section.
yeah.
Hmm.
Cause that one I could not understand. And my other question,
Mm-hmm.
can you find out what the miscellaneous revenue line item was? Cause that's a shocker. 667,320.
So that was, if you recall, Linda found that large account that was just kind of sitting out there.
Okay,
So when she combined that in with the general fund, when she was simplifying accounts, that's where that money came from. It showed up as, it looks like revenue.
but are you saying that it was never accounted for? And wouldn't
So at
that,
first she was concerned that it was never accounted for. As it turned out, it was accounted for, but had been just one of her predecessors, and it wasn't Nancy, it was before Nancy. Somebody had originally stuck that somewhere thinking it was gonna earn more interest. And, it,
But it was but it was never counted in our fund balance.
correct.
well, it wouldn't be fund balance.
Right, not fund balance, but it was never included in our
Bank
general fund or
account, well, let's just call our bank account.
Yeah,
But neither are any other accounts in this report. That's why I would have thought that that would have been treated just like a checking account or a savings account that the town has, is the money would have been put there and not shown as revenue, because it's not revenue,
Yeah.
it's money we had already.
yeah. And, and again, I'm, how, Linda and Joanne decided to, handle that transaction at the time, I don't know. I don't know how they're.
Yeah, because, yeah, I would just think it would be fund of the, like, it'd be balance in the general fund, not an income, because it really isn't an income. I mean, yes, it was a transfer of funds, but it was a transfer of funds that we already had.
Yeah.
And that's how I was looking at it. If you could just,
Get
even if it,
clarification.
Joanne has to give us a clarification, or Linda or someone.
Yeah,
to-
something, yeah. Yeah, it's like when you forget, that
That
you
you got
had
an
a savings account, like, what do you mean I still have that account open? I actually had that happen to me once. I was like, what do you mean I have an account open with you? Thought I closed that.
good time estimates.
On,
The agenda,
oh,
like
Well,
pretty much
it's-
like right
it's-
there.
it's always a guess. You never know where any of these conversations are gonna lead us sometimes, so
Yeah.
sometimes I put something down there for, 20 minutes, and 2.5 hours later, we're finishing it up. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a few people, if you put them on the agenda, you're like, yeah, that's not gonna be a 5-minute talk.
So, you like to be optimistic, but
Any other questions on revenues and expenses?
No.
I just would like, and I know the departments have been doing it, but I think we should just, I think we should reinforce to them to watch the spending, especially on that highway block grant, not knowing where the state's gonna shut us off,
Yeah.
or whether they fund it or not. So,
Mhm.
Yeah,
you guys agree if you could let the
yeah, wait for
department.
the
Yeah, so
first
that-
payment at least, see,
Yeah,
yeah,
see
that,
if we get it.
that and what our rooms and meals tax revenues are gonna be are a big question right now. Nobody has a clear answer on what's gonna happen there. Now, obviously, the governors are all asking the federal government, I'm sure you heard, Andrew Cuomo talking about, he wants the federal government to make up for his lost revenues, and I hope if they do that, that the lost revenues trickle down to the towns too.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I know the,
Not that
New
it's gonna
Hampshire
change
Municipal
for us.
Association has been advocating the same thing because of the fourth round of funding that's coming out now, that
Yeah.
that be strictly for the cities and municipalities. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you were gonna join in on that conference call that we were invited to.
Honestly, I'll have to check,
Yeah,
yeah,
Would that one
I'd-
for tomorrow?
yeah.
Would that be
for,
good? I think I can. What do you just sit and listen to what? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
alright.
dial in and see what they say. There was, I think, 2 letters from,
Margaret,
Hassan and,
from
Custer.
Shaheen.
Shaheen
Hmm.
advocating to the senators that money be sent down to the municipalities, but don't know where that's gonna end up, but I think you guys saw that email I sent to Senator Levesque, is
Yeah.
that, the COVID thing, I think as a town, even if there was no funding for what we've experienced to date, we could cover costs, but if the state's commitment of cost that should be coming to the town doesn't, then that's gonna be, I think, an unfair burden on the taxpayers.
Mhm.
We're anticipating it, that's what we budgeted. And that's why I'm hoping this first quarter's revenue from the state is in full, because my understanding is that's based on last quarter's revenue, so.
Yeah, because they're operating in their fiscal year that started last July.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned about what happens when the state budgets for fiscal year 21.
Yeah.
Because by then, they're gonna have a good sense of what their revenue situations are gonna be, and I'm expecting,
The budget they did in 20 though, aren't they 2-year budgets?
doesn't mean they can't adjust.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And obviously, they, under emergency conditions, you never know what
Yeah.
they're gonna do. You hope for the best, but, there are certainly larger communities, when I scan my emails of my peers in other larger communities, there are communities that are predicting millions of dollars of shortfall.
I think everything is proportional, and
Yeah.
they have the better means and paperwork to substantiate larger costs than
Yeah.
what we do. I think we're looking at, more of a bare bones type thing.
Yeah.
And hopefully that the state will pull through using that rainy day fund,
Yeah,
so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then just with us looking at it going, okay, as we make these decisions on what is or isn't gonna happen, knowing what that opens up in funds, but then realizing that, when we look at our budget at the end of this year, just remembering all these things of, I know it'll still be pretty fresh in our memory, but well, why didn't you spend any money last year? I'm not gonna give any. It's like, well, there was a reason for that, so. Because we were talking about that with the school. So if you look at the middle school and high school, just, you know, round numbers, just throwing it out there easy, you're looking at well over $10,000 probably just in coaches' salaries that aren't being spent for spring sports, you know. But what other what other expenses are they having that's getting shifted? And
I'm hoping they're saving on utilities.
they got, and well, not utilities, but just, you know, with disposables, paper, toilet paper, paper
Yeah.
towels,
Yeah.
chemicals. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that isn't being used. But then the same part, the district, I know this district is paying for, I don't believe, I didn't hear, but I don't believe they applied because they didn't have such a demand for it. They didn't apply for the state grants or the state waivers to allow them to serve all meals free, because they didn't have a real demand for it. So the district now has to pay for any meals that are being sent out because they're not charging the customers for them. So if they're feeding 75 kids a day, the district's picking up that tab.
Really?
Well, the free kids that are on the free reduced program and the reduced kids for breakfast are paid for by the government and the state. But then any reduced kids that get lunch, that's 40 cents a piece, and then any child who is not on the free reduced program, that's a full price lunch.
So why would they be paying for that?
Because they've chosen, instead of trying to sit there and take a roster and go, well, you know, your name, okay, and you're gonna, and then hoping that the parent pays up the bill at the end of the year. So they're paying for
I'm
it.
not even gonna go there.
Yeah, it's
That's
a different.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things, like I said, that, you know, most districts across the country applied for the waiver, but you have to. There's certain steps you have to take, and you have to show that there's been a demand for it, and they didn't have the demand I think that they expected,
Mm-hmm.
so they didn't put in the waiver for it. But there, I mean, there's other things, but yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of money that should be left over in that budget come the end of the year. But I don't know what'll happen with that. And then you get that false savings on your taxes, and then the next year you go, well, look at all this, which happened to them a couple years ago when they returned all the money. So we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting.
It is interesting to see the difference with our like little communities versus the big communities, because even like food pantry wise, it seems like the requests are down. So it's almost like everybody hunkers in and really does their best to conserve. Like even people that really need it don't want to burden those systems and can rationalize out like, hey, I really don't feel I need this, and I want it to go to somebody that really does.
Well, I think what's happened too in the smaller communities versus the larger communities, in the smaller communities, the community itself is helping to take care of people, versus the larger communities where they're just overburdened.
Mhm.
So you go to Concord, and Concord Food Pantry, they said there were people that waited in line for 3 hours, got to the front, and were like, we're out of food. We're here, St. Vincent de Paul is doing okay providing, but then lots of small groups are also providing to the people that they know need it. So there's not such a demand, because each group,
The smaller groups.
The
that
smaller
supplement.
groups are helping
Everybody's
take
looking
care.
at each other.
they're taking
Yeah.
care of their neighbor,
Yeah.
compared to going, well, you know, you don't know your neighbor. Well, here you do.
Yeah.
So I did notice that I was in Everett a couple weeks ago, and they actually had to set up big tents and shut down the road just because of the food pantry line. You know, wraps around for the better part of a mile, like people standing in
Wow.
line. Yeah. So at that point, the stark contrast, like what I see, like from around here, is just, you know, it's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, the government did. I think because the farmers are hurting so bad, like their product isn't going. It's not because restaurants aren't open and all these places. So the government, one of the other things the USDA did was they invested a couple, tens of millions or hundreds of millions, whatever, into buying from farmers direct. And then they're boxing it up, and every box is like a week's worth of compliant food. And then those boxes are distributed out to nonprofits that feed and food pantries. So people come up and they just basically hand them a box, and that box is, butchered meats, fresh produce, and all this different stuff that's coming from local farms compared to coming processed through some big processing manufacturer. So that's another piece that's out there that different places have access to. So that's at least one good. Again, who knows where that money's actually, whether it's all going to end up in larger cities, but at least there's something they're trying to do to help farmers.
I saw a thing on TV the other day, and I said, now that's sad. The farmers with the cows, and they were just dumping the milk because there's not a market. I'm like, people are still eating and drinking. The government should be buying that and get it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was one I saw the other day, the guy showing, he's an onion farmer, and it was just this, trench, just huge. Must have been 100 yards long, 20 yards wide, minimum, full of onions. And they're dumping it, he says, because there's literally no place to send them. You can't even store them. There's that many. But you don't realize when restaurants stop producing food, all of a sudden, when I worked at, restaurants, we were going through 200 plus pounds of onions a week. And now you multiply that by how many restaurants and stuff. And this guy's, instead, it's all getting plowed right back into the dirt.
But think that, when you go to a restaurant, you're going to eat that. Well, if you don't go to the restaurant, you're going to eat at home. Well, aren't you going to have an onion at home? That's what
Except that a lot of people aren't doing the same thing, and it's a
just
different,
eating differently.
Yeah. And then when you're suggested to not go out or only go out when you really need to, whatever, and you go to the grocery and you don't think about it, you're like, I'll buy an onion.
Yeah.
Compared to, like I said.
My onion usage is up.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I cook.
Yeah. But you figure, like I said, a restaurant, you're buying 50-pound bags every 2 days. Yeah.
Things we don't think about.
Yeah.
All right. I see the next tab. You have the.
Yeah, so this is kind of the old business, new business segment. I left the RFP in there for the salt storage bid, mostly to remind me to talk about the RFPs in general. I still want your input on this, even though we're gonna put this on the shelf for a bit.
You're going to forward those terms and conditions by email?
Didn't I do that already? Did I forget?
No biggie.
Okay, I thought I had, but,
Jumping forward to the road one, it looks promising.
No, it's not.
It's not.
No.
You looked at something wrong.
Yeah.
so.
The total doesn't add up. It's only the first two numbers.
So the other thing, the other RFP that I got some additional information on the LED light RFP. So Wineboro just did theirs last fall. They paid $153 a fixture just for the fixture, and then chased Eversource for $100 per fixture rebate.
Okay.
So the net cost in the fixtures was under $60 a fixture.
And that's installed, or is that just the fixture?
That's just the fixture.
Just the fixture. Okay.
So then they actually paid Eversource to do the installation for them. And now they were in a different situation than us because all of their lights hadn't been fully amortized. So they still owed Eversource a balance on their lights too. So I really couldn't take those numbers and apply them to our situation. But Eversource charged them a small fortune, probably about $300 a fixture to install.
Mm-hmm.
So, but at least we know approximately what the light fixtures, size. If we get $100 rebate per light fixture, you know, our light fixtures are gonna be, you know, probably $6,000, let's call it, maybe a little over $6,000 just for the fixtures. But it's the labor that's gonna be the tough part.
Yeah.
So,
And I think getting somebody different than Eversource is the way to do it.
yeah, now they had a much smaller number of fixtures than we did, so for them, it just made sense to make it a turnkey project for Eversource.
Okay.
But I did wanna give you at least an idea of what the fixtures we're going for, and they deal with Paul Hausman at Eversource as well, so I'm gonna call Paul because I just wanna make sure we're taking advantage of the right program at Eversource to and structure our RFP so we qualify for the right rebate program.
Mm-hmm.
And see what else is maybe out there. So that's kind of where I am with those two RFPs.
Yeah. Looking at the road one,
Yep.
there's a couple things that are weird. First of all, Ashby Road, we're not looking for a binder, we're looking for a
I know.
top.
It's irrelevant.
Okay,
It's
all right.
based on per ton,
Okay,
so.
and then we did talk about Hubbard Pond only getting the binder this year.
Let me just preempt this, because
Okay.
I saw this, and so I sent Peter an email. This is what I would like to suggest we do, is if we did Ashby Road, all of Hubbard Pond, and did the binder on Binney, if these numbers are true, would come out to $595. I was trying to maximize the dollar
Maximize the
values.
dollar, yeah.
So, I think we gotta wait to see what the paving numbers come in, because, when I was looking at this number,
Yep.
we were over $70 a ton. And last time we got the bids, I think it may have been the high 60s or just about 70, and where the price of asphalt is now, it's much lower, but we'll find out when the bids come in.
Yeah, so just to give you some
Yep.
barometer here.
Yep.
So Auburn just went out to bid,
Who did?
Auburn, New
Auburn,
Hampshire.
yep,
yeah.
yep.
So their bid was, for top coats, $71.28 per ton, for binder, $68 per ton. That's up, each of them are up $2 a ton from last year. Guilford did theirs recently. They're getting $70 per ton, same as last year, they didn't see a price increase. Barrington just awarded theirs, $72.50 a ton for overlay, top coat, and $69.60 for base, and they said this is $3 to $4 more dollars per ton than they paid for last year. So everyone's seems to be the same or a tick up from last year. And let's.
Well, when did those projects go out to bid?
These were within the last 45 days.
Yep.
And Newport's, yep, so in Newport's, their most recent bid, was $73.15 a ton, so I think Peter figured these around $72 a ton, it looked like to me when I did the quick math. I mean, one of them, it was Hubbard Pond when I did the math, one of them came out to like $78 a ton, I'm not sure where he got that money, but then again, his numbers don't add up, so.
Yeah,
So the math may not be,
I'm trying to find our,
so, let's see. 23, 72.
I don't think I have it on this tablet to see what we paid last year. Oh, wait a minute, I know, I do have it.
Yeah, so for some reason, the Benny,
Yeah,
Benny
Benny
Hill
Hill, he's
Road.
got it $77 a ton almost.
yeah, something's wrong with this math there. Right?
Yeah,
Ashby came up to like 71 and change.
Yeah, So, and
And the
Hubbard
price
Pond,
per ton is
71.81.
always the
Both
same, no matter where.
So, yeah, so we miscalculated on Benny Hill.
Last year, we paid, $66 per ton.
Yeah.
Because, and I haven't seen that bid proposal that went out, but I'm assuming that it, asked for the two prices, both for the virgin material and the other with wrap.
Yes,
Okay, so I would suspect that where the oil prices have dropped within the last
you mean,
20 days.
you mean where they're paying you to take it?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I just couldn't find a storage tank large enough.
I know. They're paying you $36
Yeah.
a gallon, $36 a barrel to take it. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that's what happens when all the tanks are full and every ship is out to sea and that's full, they're
Yeah.
full too.
I couldn't figure that. I had to ask that guy, how does something like this happen? That's what he said. I said, but don't they own the ships? Nope.
Yep.
So they're paying for that fuel to sit on the ship. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. Where's the tank when I need it?
So how's that working out for OPEC right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if the numbers, well, we'll wait to see where the numbers come in and make a determination.
All right, so behind the paving bid is, I asked Equipment East to give us, a price on the different front end loader extended warranties for powertrain and hydraulics. And, so they're asking for a 2-year, 2,000 hour, for a 2-year, 2,000 hour powertrain warranty. They want roughly $4,500. For the 1 year, they're looking for, 26 and change. I wanna get a sense for where you'd like to go. I mean, I'm kinda leaning toward the 2-year. I think that's the best value, not to mention it gives us an additional year and 1,000 hours on the unit of coverage. But before I go back and ask to negotiate a final price, I wanna know what your preference is, so I only have to ask once and try to see if we can get them to give a little.
I guess my question would be, that's only covering the powertrain, correct? So engine, transmission,
Hydraulics. Yep. I mean, if you
hyd,
keeping in mind that on a piece of equipment like this, I mean, one repair can,
it could, but I'd be more interested, and it's a good point, but
Yeah.
I'd be more interested to know on all of the equipment that we do have, excluding trucks,
Yeah.
but take the grader, loader, backhoe.
Yeah.
What do we typically pay for powertrain?
Yeah.
Or is it more, like in the case of the loader now, it's the front hitch? With, I'm assuming that's not covered under here, cause it's not powertrain related.
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, I can certainly check
Has
into that.
Peter
for you.
mentioned anything?
He didn't, I think Peter does know the details, I'll ask him tomorrow at the
Just-
staff meeting, just to
yeah.
get clarification on it. Again, I mean, this isn't a terribly old piece of equipment with only 2,000 hours on it, but I explained to the two reps when they were here yesterday, I don't wanna get this thing and next month end up with a $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 repair bill on something, cause I'll feel really, really stupid if that
Yeah.
happens.
I mean, if these
But it
numbers
will
are-
be really bad if that repair bill is on something other than the powertrain.
Well, this is true,
Yeah,
but,
Yeah, but no, based on the, that type of repair, yeah, I mean, obviously the 2 years is a better deal on it.
and I'm gonna, my goal is to pick which one we want and then go back and try to,
Knock him down a little bit.
if we can.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're getting a very good deal based on the research Peter and I have done on these,
Yeah.
and, but it never hurts to ask, as they say.
So, are you in favor of the warranty, or should we wait to see if, what Peter's input is on?
I mean, I personally, I'm in favor of it, but if he finds out from Peter tomorrow that
Typically, it's not the
typically
powertrain,
typically it's not the powertrain, we normally break something else, then, and we go, 2,500 hours before we have to do that, then, yeah, at that point, well, then don't worry about it.
Right.
But I'm also one of those people that I threw a tie rod, or threw a rod through the engine of my car in the last 1,000 miles of a warranty, so.
Saw the value of
I
it.
saw the brand new engine cost me $100. So I'm one of those people like, yeah, you never know, but
Yeah.
at the same point, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those good news, bad news. Bad news is engine shot. Good news is costs you $100.
and I'm on the other side of that.
No, I'm sure.
See what Peter says tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's a lot cheaper than what I thought it would have been, I guess, for a piece of equipment like that, but.
Yeah, and honestly, I did ask him about this particular piece of equipment. It was essentially a lease return. That's how they got it back, and whoever was leasing it obviously didn't, only 2,000 hours in 6 years, that's not a lot of time, so. And it's been fully serviced already before they put it up for sale or out for rent, so. I wanted to make sure that all the maintenance had already been done before we get it. And, but if we can, kind of fine tune and sweeten this a little bit for us, then that'll make it a great deal.
Yeah, it seems like this company seems to be doing, giving us a pretty good deal
So
on
I
the
asked
whole
him
thing.
about
Yeah.
Doosan, because Doosan's only really been in this country, I think he said 10 or 12 years selling construction equipment, and it's mostly wheel loaders and excavators that they do, although they sell articulated dump trucks, they have like, I think 5 different construction related product lines. They also own Bobcat, which I didn't realize they own Bobcat, so, it's, and they do, for the Doosan product line, they're trying to expand their dealer network and service branch. And Equipment East has 2 locations, so their main facilities in Drake, Mass, but then they have a facility up in Bow where they can do maintenance and sales as well. And he says their plan is they're already starting to clear land, and they're gonna put up like I think he said a 26,000 square feet service facility in Bow. So, and he says, honestly, because Doosan isn't an everyday name like Caterpillar and John Deere, they are being aggressive about pricing and trying to get some market penetration. And we talked about the maintenance and reliability of them, and he says we'll stack up against anybody, maybe even a little better when it comes to reliability. So he says we just have to get some more market share here and get the name recognition out there. And he says, and that's what we're trying to do. He says he says we're trying to get aggressive pricing with a lot of municipalities, and they see that as a good target market for them, for people that are on a budget, like to go with low bidder if possible. So he says we're pretty focused on municipal government. So it sounded very reasonable. It's a South Korean company. And it's part of a bigger conglomerate. They build everything from, they kind of have a heavy industry side that builds turbine engines and everything else for a variety of other industries. So it's not a small company by any stretch.
Mhm.
And we just aren't as aware of them in the United States as the other brands, but their intention is to make a huge investment here. And there's the two Equipment East locations, and there's another location elsewhere, so there's at least 3 Doosan dealers right here in New England for parts and service. So, you know, parts distribution is really my biggest concern, so as long as availability of parts is, you know, a day away, then, you know, I think that works for us.
Well, 2 items I'd suggest that if you could address with them is, one is if that powertrain warranty includes picking up the equipment, the trucking charge to get it to them.
Okay.
And 2, what are their shop rates? I know when we're paying CAT, they
Yeah.
quite expensive.
So, so the good news is they also do have a large service, organization that can actually do repairs here if they can. So
Good.
you don't have to transport it to their facility. So they have, a few guys that live right close by here in New Hampshire that work for them, so.
On old business, John, I'm just running through last week's notes. Did anything happen regarding the school and the
Yep,
signs?
I sent them out, because we also, happened to be, Sean and I both saw the same thing on like the same day. But, it looks like they met with the school, and I believe right now the plan is they're going to use the poles on the school's grounds.
Okay,
Which I think is, if they think of it long-term, I think it's a better idea. They can actually go 4 sides on every pole. They can use those for all sorts of things if they end up, you know, getting state championships, things like that. They definitely have a better opportunity and better than whether or not they're on the state-owned or the utility-owned poles, so.
Yep.
But she said if something changes, she'll let me know. But just so you know, the alternative that we suggested was they have similar that stick in the ground, much like maybe like a realtor sign or
Oh.
something like that.
yeah,
So, but then the posters in the middle of it, you know, so that it would be on the ground instead of up high, and then they could put them down, take them out, and it wouldn't really cost any installation or worries or anything like that. They could put them along the roadside or anything like that. So that was the suggestion we made after my initial discussion with them as well, so. But that's where they are now, is using the grounds on the school, so.
you talked to Mark or Peter about the time clock for the lights?
So, Mark did go down and reset it, and he's gonna monitor it to see, you know, Peter's thought was that if there was a power outage or something like that, it might have affected,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how the light was operating when it was coming on and coming off. But I told Mark to monitor it, that if it was, you know, not reliable, that we need to look into, you know, replacing it. So, and he says there's actually more than one down there, so. he
Time
took a look
clocks.
at them all. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mhm.
so, so he's gonna monitor them to see what's happening there, and, if we need to make some investments in replacement parts, we will.
It's a neat little cluster in that little section. A lot of stuff jammed into one little spot.
Yep,
Yeah.
so,
Any other newer road business?
11 Temple Road,
funny you should bring that up.
Yeah, I saw an email recently.
I think just as we were coming in, I didn't get to read
So-
it.
I didn't get to read it either.
So I talked to the broker that's listing it on the various websites, and explained to him that the town still has an interest in that property, and we were unaware that it was up for active listing, and we had talked to the person that we sold it to conditionally, that told us that he was unaware it was being listed. Well, as it turns out, that's not the case. There's an agreement between Kerrig Management who we sold the property to after it was tax deeded, and another Granite Properties LLC, Granite Properties in New England LLC, which is out of Laconia. They're the ones, they are representing themselves as joint owners of that property and listing it with, it was a entry only, real estate. So those are the ones that are actually listing it for them. So the owner of Entry Only Realty, who's actually based in downtown Boston, he gave me a call. Finally, we connected. We've been trying to connect up, and we had a discussion about it. I explained to him that we have a conditional deed on that property, and he said, well, obviously this has not been represented correctly to us. He says, can you send me a copy of the deed, which I did. I sent it off to him so he could read the details of the deed. Then he emailed me back and he said he's gonna take it off the listing and follow up with the people who asked him to list it. So I sent an email to Steve Lowe, explaining that I was a bit frustrated that we've had several conversations about this property and nothing he has told me has come to be. And that I would be discussing with the selectmen tonight. We do have the right of reverter in that deed, so that the ownership can be transferred back to the town at some point in time if we're not satisfied that the conditions have been met. That's your call. I mean, to me, it looks like the timeline has gone on for an extended period of time. I think the town has been very accommodating for a variety of reasons. So I guess the ball is in your court on what you'd like to do. So theoretically, if you go online tomorrow, hopefully you won't see it listed. If the real estate broker that I talked to yesterday follows through, and he did follow up with an email after I sent him the deed, just saying he received it and he's gonna take it down.
My recommendation at this point is we notify him, because my understanding is he hasn't even filed for a building permit. So, I would, still try and keep it cordial with him
Yep.
that, an application hasn't even been filed for a building permit, so his indication to the board that he was gonna be starting in the spring hasn't come to fruition. So if we don't see a building permit application and commencement of the work after an approval of a building permit and put in a date, then we'll revert back because we have other people that are interested in renovating the property.
Yep. So what, do you wanna?
Monday? No.
Would this be like a 30 days?
The 28th.
No,
I
sooner.
How's
I'm
May
assuming-
15th sound?
I was about to say May 15th.
Well, by the time he gets a plan in and it gets an approval for a permit, I think in due fairness, I wouldn't do anything earlier than the 29th of May.
29th.
Yeah.
Just to give more than adequate time, again, like you
Yes.
said, keeping
Yeah,
cordial.
we're trying
and,
to
yeah.
work with him, but there are people that have indicated an
right.
interest in
Yeah.
renovating it, so.
Couple of people. Yeah.
So, the only thing I had, we already touched on, was the Collins Road, Oak Hill Road situation, which is supposedly gonna resolve itself by the end of business tomorrow, so I think we're in good shape there.
I have two other things, but one is, the Ford's property at the end of Old Country Road, County Road, whatever, sold, to a real estate LLC out of Massachusetts. And I'm just curious as to, keeping an eye on what that plan is, cause I know that's supposed to be a non-developable, you can't develop it, that piece of property.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I know like
It
part
could
of
be in the
it's,
deed. Yeah.
well, it's in current use or whatever.
Well, you can take it out of current
Right.
use.
So I'm just curious what the whole deal is with that,
Oh.
because I'm sure that, I don't know what the plan is, but I'm just curious, to keep an eye on it.
Well, they can't develop it because it's not on a class 5 road.
So, but that's what I mean, so I'm just curious
Oh.
as to whether there was, because their business plan lists it as like maintenance, development, such and such, so they're just like a real estate, that's all they do. It's just a real estate, I don't know, holding company or holding firm or, so I don't know if it's like an Airbnb plan for it or what the deal is, but just
How
something that,
many acres? Do you know?
lot, I don't know.
I
what
wonder
it
if
was.
is it a forestry type company that comes in and
No, that's
No.
not how they're listed on their LLC.
Do you have a map and lot number on
it's the last house on
Last house on
Country
Old
Road,
Country
on the
Road.
right hand side as you go up the road.
Yeah.
that? So which side of,
Old Country Road from River Road.
It's on
If you're going up Old
toward
Country
Manly?
Road,
No.
you know where River Road is.
Yep.
And then Old Country Road is where the newer bridge is.
yep,
If you stay on that road, it becomes a class 6 road. And the Ford property
Oh,
was the
so it-
last house.
alright, so if you're going river away from the center of town, it's the part of Old Country Road that's on the left.
On the left,
On the
yes.
left, yeah,
Yeah,
and then,
yeah.
and then their property is on the right, last.
Yep, correct.
last on the right.
Okay.
Yep.
Alright,
Yeah,
I'll-
just something to,
yeah,
it went, it's sold to a LLC out of Newton, Mass. And it's
What
just one of
happened
those
to the
ones-
golf course? Who owns that property?
The old golf course, the one that,
Well, the one that was gonna be a golf.
yeah, the one in
course.
between, that,
That-
yeah,
after
butts
Ford's,
up, yeah.
yeah.
I don't know.
That went quiet and I forgot, cause didn't,
Well, it's because they sold all the loam off of it.
well, yeah, but that's already 20 years ago,
Right.
but didn't, Paul Turman, I thought, bought it at one time and then,
There were a couple different people looking at it. There was one group that was trying to see to see if they could get, the One Foundation, which is like,
what is that?
it's a golf, they
Oh.
teach kids,
Oh,
groundskeeping, and like basically when you do it, the whole thing becomes a foundation. And it's supposed to be all used for education, not only sports education, but business education, groundskeeping, food and beverage, everything is part of the One Foundation. It's Tiger Woods and Chichi Rodriguez and all those guys, and there were some people trying to get them interested at one point because the land was there and all that, yeah. So,
and then I think at one point it was signed by the IRS or federal government or something, so I don't know whatever happened.
But, and then the last piece I had was, just so you know, I don't know if you saw a new flagpole went up at the fire department.
Yeah, I was wondering where that came from. Who
Who's on the-
donated it?
What's that?
Who donated it?
The fire,
Auxiliary?
auxiliary. So she contacted me the other day, they tore out the trees, they did cut one piece of the blacktop, so that, right on the edge, so it had to meet the setback. But then it's all cemented in, it looks very nice, they did a very clean job on the trimming of the blacktop and everything. So, but they put that in on Saturday, it looks very nice.
I just wish they had let us know ahead of time,
Yeah, I got the call on Saturday.
because people are working there on the property with equipment. That's not the town.
But yeah, the auxiliary paid for everything.
There was something else.
Oh, so
Did
this,
they ever get that working, the operation of the light there? Traffic signal?
So, it's flashing.
it's flashing
Yes.
yellow, they don't have this.
I think they had to order whatever the control piece of it was, that's the last I heard from Mark.
Okay,
So, sorry, this is the description of the company, or the LLC that bought the land. To acquire, develop, renovate, rehabilitate, improve, lease, in whole or in part, own, operate, manage, hold for investment, finance, mortgage, sell, exchange, or otherwise dispose of and deal with real estate. To perform and engage in any and all services and activities related or incidental thereto, and to engage in any activities permitted limited liability companies under Massachusetts law. But they bought New Hampshire.
They'll come around.
So I just figured I'd let you guys
And
know.
what's their name?
SYMTT LLC.
Smith.
SYMT. SYMTT. Yeah, so they have like an agent that handles their stuff. Lawrence A. Kletter, Esquire, out of Newton, Mass.
Well.
But, so I just figured, like you said, not being a town
Yeah.
maintained road and all the other sort of thing, it's just something that, I mean, that is a quiet road.
And that's a scenic road.
Yep.
So,
So
Yeah.
just, I figured I'd bring it up, cause someone asked me if I had heard anything about it.
that's interesting, because now that you raised that, we never heard anything after on the gentleman off of River Road that put in
The
the,
bridge.
the bridge.
That all just stopped as well, just disappeared.
Mm. Speaking of,
So what's that, the bridge
I
to
went-
nowhere?
no,
It's a bridge to
he
an
bought the land on the other side of, the south, it's not the Souhegan River, it's, the brook before
Yes.
Waterloon Pond,
Yeah.
and just went in and built a bridge. There were two abutments there, but they were no approvals or anything, and so the engineer at the time said, okay, we understand, before we do anything else, we'll get everything squared away. And we've never heard anything, and the point was, the person that bought the land and put the bridge in was going to build a home there for themselves.
Yeah.
And nothing's ever happened, so it's gotta be a year by now, right?
Yeah, yeah, cause it's
Yeah.
when I was sitting on the planning board, when
Yeah.
that was going through.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Why do people think they could do things without?
And you know what the worst thing is? They hired a civil engineer
Who should have known?
who should have known, and she said, well, the way I'm interpreting this, and we said, well, look at our zoning ordinances, you got this, and this that you didn't comply with.
Right.
So anytime you're near water, you know the DES.
Right,
or
and that
even
was-
the EPA could be.
yeah. And
Well,
the
she
whole-
said
yeah.
they went to the DES and that they got the approval because the abutments were already there, and that they wouldn't be in the water. Well, ours says that, if you're within 50 feet of the water, you need
Yeah.
the approvals, and so
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah, and she'd used the whole thing, well, I didn't see anything on your website.
yeah.
I'm like, well, you didn't make a phone call? Well, I looked on the website. And the rest of us went, yeah, but it's right there on the website. If you click this and go there, it's there. It says you can't do that. Yeah, because then it had to do with the bridge couldn't be so much, but, so if the water rises, so when are you in compliance? When the water's low or when the water's high? Cause you can't restrict boat access, is one of the other things. There were a couple other weird little things, but yeah, it all came down to the fact of, yeah, you're within 50 feet of the water.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, but yeah, that one just disappeared, got
Yeah.
really quiet, we haven't heard anything else about it. Again, no building permit going in to put a house or anything else. Cause that's kinda what we said is, well, at that point, you'll have to come before the boards and mea culpa,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And then the other one, we had a discussion, and I don't know where it landed up with Mr. Simpson regarding Stoll Road.
Oh, so I talked with planning on that. I talked to John Schamoff. So, the the project he's moving forward with was the ZBA project, yet they have not filed any applications with the planning board about that project. They are coming back on June 15th as part of a continued hearing on the original project. And the question is, what his intention is to do with that. Because he told me he's basically walking away from that project, so why he's asking to come in to discuss that with the planning board, I don't know. So, the planning board, I'm not sure what they're gonna do. I think they wanna get their arms around, do they need to keep continuing this project, or has he submitted all the information he's gonna submit before they make a decision on the project? Or is he just gonna tell them he's withdrawing the project and he's done with that one and gonna go forward with the ZBA one? So we don't know the answers to that. The planning board chair, feels that when dealing with Stoll Road, that really comes under the off-site improvements part of the responsibilities for the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
So they wanna start handling that discussion as part of whatever he wants to do, if and when he ever submits an application for the ZBA approved project, which he has yet to do. So, now his comment to me was he wanted to get an idea of what the estimated cost of his share of whatever upgrades to Stoll Road were gonna be, and I'm not sure how we can help him with that. But depending on what the cost of that is gonna be, will determine whether he's gonna move forward with either project, because if it's cost prohibitive, he's not gonna do it. So, that's where it is. We don't have a lot of details from him, other than the one that's been being litigated for the last decade plus. And it sounds like he has no intention of even entertaining that project at this point in time.
I'm hoping that I would think that the planning board would at some point just call it that. It's been before us now for 15 years. We need to act on it,
Right.
make a decision, and if he wants to move forward with the development that he received the ZBA approval for, and he wants to find out the impact of his costs, I would think that the onus is on him to determine that cost of the work.
Yeah, I don't see how we would wanna
Yeah.
put ourselves in a position of,
And if I remember, the information he gave us as far as the increase in traffic was bogus to begin with.
so he
I
said.
mean, it was so low, it was ridiculous. I mean, every resident in that complex will use the entirety of Stoll Road.
Mm-hmm.
And what he sent us, if I remember, I mean, it's been a while since he came before us that day, but those numbers were ridiculously low. I mean, how many units is he putting in there?
I think there were 40 units.
Yeah, 40, 45 is what I
40
remember.
units.
So if it's even one car, unless it's a time like this, you're looking at, 80 trips a day on the entirety of Stoll Road. And I think his estimates were below that.
I think what he was trying, though, to sway us to agree with is that we would need to calculate or put a betterment assessment not only on those for Stoll Road, but for Holly View, for Cedar Ridge, for Green Farm, any of them that have the use of the road. And I think, if this development wasn't going in, would we be upgrading that now? I think we'd be paving it, but we wouldn't be
We wouldn't be widening the road all the way out to that
Right.
extent.
Correct.
No, we'd be paving what was there and probably stop at a certain point and go, well, there you go.
Yeah,
We wouldn't be doing the improvements that are gonna be required to get trucks and that.
well, I'm
and-
just thinking
And
for 40 units, and I'm thinking most people are, I hope my presumption is correct, 2 cars.
Right, well, you're required minimum 2 parking spots for every apartment when you
Yeah.
put in an apartment. So, yeah, so you're thinking that's 40 units, 80 cars,
Twice a day. It's
twice a
160.
day, it's
Yeah.
160.
60, and I think one time when I counted just on Stoll Road, there may have been 26 houses. So the proportionate numbers of residences are going to be significantly
Yeah,
on his end.
Well, he's
Mhm.
essentially gonna triple, right?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I think at the last planning board meeting, that's what the purpose of, like, they're trying to get clarification from him, like exactly where he's going, what the intent going forward is, and just sort of like get it off, like what should be on the radar, what shouldn't be on the radar, and so it's good, you know, to get the communication like from him. And I didn't quite understand if it had to do with this gentleman or not, because there's so much information out that I'm trying to take in. But I believe it was him. There's some concern that he was trying to come to the like members of the select board and then jumping past like the planning board, or like using the different entities and hoping that nobody communicates with each other to some
Well,
degree.
At the last discussion we had, the select board was under the understanding, because it's a town road, that would fall under the select board. And the planning board is saying because it falls under the subdivision requirements, that would be an off-site improvement, which would fall under the purview of the planning board. So the select board said, fine, if you guys wanna handle it, that,
Okay, so it is in their court squarely.
yeah.
Yes.
I
Okay,
just don't
okay.
know though with those off-site improvements, because I'm not in favor, but if there were betterment assessments, which means that any upgrades that would have to be done, you'd land up charging the people that live on that road those costs.
Okay,
And that wouldn't fall under the purview of the planning board. You know, their purview is what the developer needs to pay.
Yep.
To do an upgrade if they,
yeah, that, and I'm not in favor of the assessments of the people who currently live there, because,
Right.
you know, they're not going to benefit from the betterment of the road, which is to get to his piece.
yeah, it's all because of his.
Right, it's
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
past the houses that are currently there that has to be improved, or, you know,
Yeah, it's not like they're getting town water put down the street,
Right,
they're all
no,
gonna benefit
no,
from it.
it's like everything
Yeah.
past the current houses has to be widened, there's like a tree out in the middle of it and all this, yeah. That's all for his people,
Yeah,
so
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of that at all, so. Yeah. So,
Yep, so
if you
that's
could
what
keep
that,
us clued in when they, meet with him on that, that'd be good.
okay, I do have some dates. I'm not gonna say any right now,
Yeah.
but there's, I
Yeah.
wanna say like mid-May,
Yeah,
there
if
was
there's something
something
you can't
coming
make
up.
it to,
Okay.
let me know,
I'll just go in the audience, just to,
Make sure it's on the up and up.
yes.
Well, yeah, so much of it's, the Zoom and everything still, so,
yeah.
yeah.
By
I know.
then it'll be back to.
Hopefully. Yeah,
hopefully.
At the rate he's going, we'll
Yeah.
forget what COVID-19.
Right. Yeah, why did this get us that? Oh, yeah, the plague. That's right.
We all set?
I'll set, motion to adjourn?
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.